Hi everybody, I'm sorry I'm not with you in class on Tuesday. There is one thing that I wanted to do that I think we can do on this video, so I'm going to share this with you in an announcement so we won't have to spend time on it on Thursday, although I'm always happy to take questions about it. Um, Hopefully by now you've made good progress on your syllabus and lesson plan template assignment, and you can start to think a little bit about the next major assignment, which is the Communities Project. And the reason I want to show this to you now is because I think almost all of you have gone to your schools for at least your initial meeting, and you can already start to do some work on the first parts of this project, especially now in the beginning of the semester when you may not have quite as many projects to do. So you can read the description here. Some of the things that I'm referring to about the readings that inform this project or readings that we will be doing in the next couple of weeks. But the idea here is that you are studying the school community and also the communities that are served by the school, and that's plural for a reason, because of course there's lots of different things that go into community and lots of different potential populations that are served by any school. So there are 6 parts to this project, and you're going to actually submit it 2 separate things. So what you're going to be working on first is the background research and reflection, and that's parts 1 through 4. So number 1 and 2 you are probably ready to do right now. Part 1 is an ethnographic description where you're going to be looking at your classroom, the school, and then the land immediately surrounding the school. And you see here I'm asking you to include some photos or videos. I also have had students sometimes do this on an annotated Google map, but it's totally fine to just write it on a document, Word doc, and then attach your video or photographs to that. The next thing is to do some research on the web about what things are publicly available about the school. So every school has, whether it is the Maryland State Report Cards or the Delaware Department of Education school profile page, all of the states have individual district and school pages for all of the schools in which you're placed. Most of your schools also have their own school websites that may or may not be linked through that first site that I mentioned. So you want to look at both of those sources, and you want to be looking through all the things that I've listed here. Also do some news search, see if there's some recent articles about students or teachers or anything that's been happening at your school. And here's where I want you to do some reflecting on, what do you see in terms of demographics at the school? How many students of color versus white students? How many students have IEPs and 504s? Other kinds of demographic information, students living in poverty. And one thing that we will need to talk about a little bit is that the state of Delaware has, in the last year and a half, changed the way in which they report students living in poverty. So there was a big jump 2 years ago between the year before and that current year, meaning that many of the students didn't seem to be living in poverty anymore, but it actually wasn't any change in their income. It was a change in the way that was calculated. So we can talk about that a little bit more in class. But just to be exploring some of these ideas and some of the populations in the school itself. And then these last questions are particularly important. What are the stories that are being told about your school? You know already from taking English 295 and other courses that you need to have that inquiry stance, and it's hard to do that when I know some of you have already expressed to me, friends or people, classmates, other people that are saying, oh, you're at X school, oh, good luck with that, or wow, that's going to be a really tough place. And so there's dominant narratives out there about these sites, and so what do you think is being told and what might be going missing as you begin to spend more time there? Part 3, I've got a list of options for you for survey and interviews, and you're going to gather some data by asking people about the school. Important to note here is that you need to do only one for each one. So for students, you can survey one class, you can interview 1 to 3 students, or you can interview a recent graduate. You do not need to do all 3 of these. You can just pick one. For teachers, obviously an easy one would be to interview your clinical educator. Another might be to interview a different teacher in the building if you had that opportunity, or you could interview an administrator. And then the third category is community, and you can interview a parent or guardian of a student who's in your cooperating teachers class right now. You could interview someone who lives in the community, and for those of you who are in a Newark or a Wilmington school, what you would want to do there, because I know the districting is very complicated, you want to interview someone whose children would or did attend the school in which you student taught or student teaching. So if you are interviewing someone who lives in Wilmington and their children were districted for McCain, but they didn't go there, then in your student teaching at McCain, then you can still interview that person because they'll have some things to say about the community and the school based on what their experiences have been. But if your person was districted for AI and you're student teaching at McCain, that's not, even though it's still Wilmington, you can't do that, that parent or that family member. And then a final option for community is to participate in some kind of community event. This is not a sports event or something with the school. Honestly, most people don't end up doing this one, but if you have any questions about it, let me know. We do sometimes have students who do this one. So once you've got your data sources, I do have some sample ideas for questions that you can ask, but you are open to adapting those however you wish. I do want to point out a couple things here. One is that we're going to look at the NCTE standards that this project is assessing, and you'll see that they have to do with language. So you want to make sure that you're doing some delving into language, and language is, of course, being construed very broadly here. It's not just about the literal languages that students and their families speak. They might be bilingual in Korean and English, or Spanish and English, or whatever, but it's also about language varieties and dialects and things that you're noticing about the ways that people communicate in and out of school. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is this bolded part, which is that you do need to turn in your data. So if you have recordings of interviews, you need to submit that, and you can email it to me or attach it to Canvas, or if you did surveys in a class, then you need to turn in the hard copies. You can scan them, or you can give me the actual surveys, and I will return them to you. So then once you've got all that data, then you're going to do some thinking about it. You know, what were some things that you learned? What sort of themes emerged? What things were really new to you? And what things were important to you as you think about becoming an English teacher in this community? Guideline is 3 to 5 pages. That's just a guideline, not a restriction. And then summarizing the standards. So you'll see the one thing that you're eventually going to be doing is developing a lesson based on your research, but you don't need to worry about that part yet. Eventually you will be assessed on these 3 standards. So one is that you are designing instruction that incorporates students' home and community languages to enable skillful control over their rhetorical choices and language practices for a variety of audiences and purposes. The next one is that you are planning and implementing instruction based on curriculum, based on the requirements of a school, a community, the district, and then your knowledge about your students, their linguistic and cultural backgrounds. And then finally, that you're using what you know about theories and research that's planning lesson that is responsive to students' identities, their national and local and international histories, their individual identities, and again, language and dialect. So that is a quick overview of this first section of the project. This is due on November 1st, so it's not for a while, but something to start thinking about, especially these first parts that you definitely have the tools to do, especially 1 and 2 at this point. And we will open that up for some questions later in the week, and I will see you, I hope, on Thursday, as long as I don't get picked for a jury. Thanks.